What if the monarchy's greatest scandal wasn't waiting at the gates, but sleeping in the king's own bed? This isn't about a rebellious prince. This isn't about an outsider duchess. This is about the queen, the king, and a secret so explosive. It was delivered like a poison-tipped arrow to the one person who could never ignore it. The future king himself. Winter iced the palace windows. Inside, the chill was deeper. A silence so heavy it felt like a scream pressed into velvet. Staff moved through the halls like ghosts. Whispered conversations died before they were born. This was the quiet before the avalanche. The moment before the foundation of a 1,000-year institution finally, irrevocably, cracks. The end began with a folder. Prince William entered his private study. Dawn was a gray smear over London. His desk, usually a landscape of orderly briefings, held a single, stark anomaly. A plain manila envelope. No aide had placed it. No signature was required. It sat alone, centered with surgical precision. Bearing the confidential seal of the palace's own security division, his stomach dropped. This was a breach. A message. A silent, screaming alarm. He opened it. Page 1, intercepted communications. Codename, the Huntsman. Page 2, transcripts. Lines that stole the air from the room. I think of our conversations like air in this gilded cage. You remind me of who I was before the crown. Before the wait, when he is away, the hours are long. Your voice makes them bearable. Page 3, photographs. Queen Camilla, leaning into a blurred figure. Her smile was the revelation unguarded, luminous, intimate. A smile the public never saw. A smile her husband might not have seen in years. William's hand trembled. This wasn't just a private betrayal. This was a structural fault line under the throne. Public trust, that fragile, modern currency of the crown, would vaporize in the heat of this scandal. His father's hard-won reign, his fragile health, the monarchy's very survival all balanced on the edge of this paper cut. For 2 days, William carried the atom bomb alone. He moved through his duties, a man already grieving. He had the documents authenticated by a source so shadowy they had no name. The verdict was final, real. The leak was internal. Someone inside the palace, with the highest clearance, wanted him to know, wanted him to act. The burden was a physical sickness. He confided only in Catherine. Her reaction wasn't shock. It was the grim understanding of a soldier seeing the battle map. The crown, she said, her voice a low, steady blade, cannot be built on a lie. Even if the truth breaks the king's heart, William knew his duty. It was horrifying. He had to break his father to save his father's kingdom. What would you have done? Protected your father from a devastating truth? Or handed him the dagger that would cut out his own heart to save the throne? Act I, the glamour vs. the trapped glamour was the ultimate trap. The fairy tale of a king and queen, finally united after decades of turmoil. The narrative of steadfast devotion. Camilla, the loyal companion turned respected consort. Charles, the monarch who sacrificed for love. It was a perfect story. And like all perfect stories, it was built on secrets. The trap was sprung not with a kiss, but with a click. A digital intercept. A camera lens in a secluded garden. The Huntsman wasn't a villain. He was a ghost from a past life. A voice of familiarity in a world of crushing protocol. A refuge. Camilla's crime wasn't passion. It was loneliness. The king's illness. The isolating weight of the crown. The long, silent hours in palaces that are museums, not homes. She reached for a memory of freedom. She reached for a man who knew the woman, not the queen, and in reaching, she handed the monarchy's enemies a weapon they'd dreamed of for decades. Act 2, the scandalous decision. William requested a private audience. The formality of the summons was a funeral bell. King Charles, in his sunlit sitting room, looked up with paternal warmth, unaware, always, tragically, unaware of the storms his son carried. William placed the folder on the table between them. A silent, terrible offering. Charles opened it. The room's warmth died. He read. His face didn't crumple. It turned to stone. He processed the transcripts, his wife's intimate words to another man. He studied the photographs, her unguarded joy in another's company. The evidence of a world that excluded him. Where did this come from? The king's voice was the sound of dust settling on a grave. My desk, anonymous, it's genuine. The confirmation was the final hammer blow. Charles stood, turning to the window. His shoulders bore the weight of the ancestors staring down from their portraits. He didn't see the winter garden. He saw decades, the scandal, the waiting, the public scorn, the fight for acceptance. The crown finally his. Only for this, does anyone else know? Catherine, a small, bitter nod. A tiny mercy in an ocean of disgrace. William watched the most devastating transformation, a king dissolving, leaving only a betrayed man. Charles asked the agonizing questions. Could it be innocent? Could the context change it? William's silence was the answer. The king dismissed him with a father's frail nod, a gesture that meant I must break alone. William left, the gilded corridors feeling like a tunnel into a darker future. He had done his duty. It tasted like betrayal, smart move by a future king securing the institution, or a ruthless power play disguised as loyalty. Act 3, the optics of a broken heart confrontation was scheduled after sunset. The queen was summoned. Not invited, summoned. The language itself was a verdict. Camilla entered the king's private drawing room. Her poise was impeccable, a diamond mask. But her eyes, those told a different story. She saw the folger. She saw her husband's posture, the rigid spine of a sovereign. Not the softened shoulders of a husband. Charles didn't shout. He presented the facts, cold, clear, clinical. The Huntsman intercepted communications. Private meetings she asked to see. Her hands, usually so steady, trembled as she held the pages. As she read her own secret words, her face, the masterwork of composed dignity, paled. The color drained, leaving the stark white truth of a woman caught. Her confession was a quiet avalanche. She knew him, a friend, a confidant from a life before crowns. Long conversations. A solace during the king's illness, during the terrifying isolation of her new role. Nothing physical, she insisted, the tears now falling, tracing paths through a lifetime of careful composure. But emotional. I was weak. I was lonely. The king's question cut through the room like shattered glass. Were these exchanges appropriate? For a queen? She looked at the floor. The silence was her guilt. He spoke then, not as a jealous man, but as a monarch. He spoke of betrayal in its many forms. Of trust as the foundation not just of a marriage, but of the monarchy itself. When she reached for his hand, a reflex of decades, he didn't take it. The inch of space between their fingers became a canyon, her final, terrified whisper, will this become public? His answer was a sovereign's, not a husband's. The risk is calculable. And it is high. She left the room, a queen dethroned by her own heart. He remained, staring at the folder on the table. A man who had fought a lifetime for a love that now lay in ruins at his feet. Act 4, the fallout. A verdict in the dark. War Council convened at Balmoral. Not in a grand throne room, but in a sealed strategy room. The air was thick with dread. The Lord Chamberlain. Trusted advisors. Prince William. The folger sat at the center of the polished table like a cursed relic. King Charles laid out the crisis. No emotion. Just facts. A leak would trigger a media inferno. Charles and Camilla and scandal in a headline. A ghost from the 90s resurrected to burn down his reign. To armies formed in the room. Team Shield, protect the queen, bury it. Call it a private marital strain. Manage, deny, deflect. Team Sword, the monarchy's integrity is everything. Internal action is necessary. Transparency, even behind closed doors, is strength. William spoke into the tension. We cannot govern from inside a lie. The crown's stability must be real, not just a photograph. His voice was calm. It was the calm of an heir who knew the throne's next breath depended on this moment. All eyes fell on Charles. The fire crackled. The Scottish wind hushed. The king's verdict was a masterpiece of chilling, pragmatic sacrifice. Camilla would remain queen, no public humiliation, no divorce. The facade would stand, but she would step back from all high-profile public duties, indefinitely. Her office, her staff, her communications all would undergo a discreet, comprehensive review. It was not forgiveness. It was not destruction. It was quarantine. The infected limb was isolated to save the body of the monarchy. The palace absorbed the verdict overnight. A seismic, silent shift. Corridors hummed with unspoken knowledge. The queen retreated, a ghost in her own palace. The king walked the portrait galleries alone, judged by the unblinking eyes of history. Act V, the legacy anew. Cold, relit-eyed world knew something was coming. The airwaves buzzed with frantic speculation. Abdication, illness? The broadcast was set. King Charles faced the camera. He wore the mask of serene authority. He spoke of periods of reflection and evolution of roles for the stability of the institution. Monarch speak. Then, the two blows, the acceleration. The Prince and Princess of Wales would now assume day-to-day opera. Chanel leadership of the monarchy. The future was being shoved into the present. The disappearance, Queen Camilla would step back from public duties to focus on private patronage and support for His Majesty. He thanked her for her steadfast service. The words were warm. The sentence was a life sentence of quiet exile. The subtext screamed louder than the script. The king has chosen the crown over his queen. In her private suite, Camilla heard her new, reduced reality broadcast to the planet. The gilded cage had just gotten smaller. Analysts exploded. A new era. A soft regency. What aren't they telling us? The world dissected his calm tone, missing the ocean of heartbreak in the king's eyes. That night, Charles stood before the immortal gaze of Queen Elizabeth II in her portrait, the symbol of duty above all. He had made his choice in her shadow. He had chosen the institution. The price was the woman beside him, the final, unforgiving cliffhanger. Fallout is a new world order for Camilla, a queen in title only, a figurehead placed on a shelf. Her role is hollowed out. She is a permanent, living reminder of the cost of a moment's weakness. For William and Catherine, no longer the future. They are the present's emergency pillars. The weight of the monarchy just crashed onto their shoulders a decade early. They rule from a crisis. For Charles, a king reigning from a throne of solitary sacrifice. He has the stability he demanded. He sleeps in the bed of his own making. It is cold. For the monarchy, the happy family fairy tale is dead. But a new, harder story is born. The institution is ruthless. It will cut out its own heart to survive. It is cold, it is clinical, and it is still standing. The public sees a graceful transition. The private reality is a palace in a state of permanent, silent fracture. A king who can't meet his wife's eye. A son who bears the guilt of the cat list. A queen who is a ghost in her own home. But the most dangerous question remains. Echoing in the silent halls, the leak came from inside. Who is the Huntsman? And who delivered the folder to William? A loyalist protecting the crown from future exposure? Or a malicious player engineering a crisis to accelerate the succession? The enemy isn't outside the walls. The enemy has a key. And they are still in the room. The debate is now yours. The court of public opinion is in session. Team Crown or Team Heart? Did King Charles perform the ultimate act of sovereign duty? Making a horrific but necessary sacrifice to preserve the monarchy's future? Proving he is a king before he is a man? Or did he betray the woman who stood by him through decades of hell? Sacrificing her on the altar of public perception to protect his own legacy? Was William a heroic heir exposing a lethal truth to save the institution from within? Or was he a treacherous son, weaponizing intelligence to destabilize his father's reign and seize soft power? Sound off below. Choose your side. This is the royal family's darkest hour. Where do you stand?